And I'm going to set the stage, and then John is going to talk about it. This was a warehouse, not a warehouse, that's not true. It was a facility where a provider of air conditioning equipment to licensed personnel could come in. You had to be licensed to come in and use that shop. It was off the West Park Tollway, which is pretty high dollar property, but this facility could not even be, the city of Houston would not issue a commercial permit for this facility because there was insufficient parking. If you go inside the building, they had a little storefront inside the building, but it was bare walls in the back for most of it. And so they put an outrageous amount of value on that property. But then this is what will always strike my memory. This is on the West Park Tollway, up reasonably close to Channel 39, I believe. They went 20-something miles to Katy and got a Charming Charlie store. They went 20-something miles to Deer Park and got a fast food restaurant in a new strip center. Then they went 20 miles back over towards HCAD, 290 area, and got another restaurant.
CC's Pizza.
And I'm going to say this for John because I witnessed, I've done the research on this one and I witnessed it. What happens when you see this kind of case? Let me tell you who has failed. The chief appraiser has failed. The ARB panel has failed. The ARB has failed. The taxpayer liaison has failed. The attorney for the ARB has failed. The state comptroller's office has failed because they allow that kind of nonsense to go on. The legislature has failed because they do not have accountability measures in process. The case that John is going to be talking about and that we will focus on represents a comprehensive failure breakdown of the system. You've heard some this morning, others. This one is about as bad as it gets. A system that has accountability, somebody should have lost their job, several people should have lost their jobs or their contracts, but the system just keeps rolling forward. So John, with that softball, why don't you give us a little bit of the details on it?
Instead of penalizing them for malfeasance, they get awarded. And they get an extra insulation from the legislature coming up here in 2020. This was a case that was brought to me by another tax consulting firm, because I help other tax consulting firms on arbitration and litigation. In this particular instance, this building had a retail facade in front. However, it had one parking space per 1,000 square foot. The city of Houston mandates you have at least 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square foot to even be dubbed a retail center. So you have one row of parking, and it wasn't sufficient to accommodate anything. This man was simply selling air conditioning parts to the trades. You had to have a tax ID to even buy anything from him. He did not to collect sales taxes. This was all tax exempt buyers. He had one tenant, which was a furniture store that went out of business at the time. Hadn't paid rent in months. So he had vacant space. About a third of the building was vacant space. In this particular instance, and this is what you find typically with any commercial property in Harris County, this is where I caution any property owner, any small business, you're going to get a series of one-liners across the page of, quote, sales of similar, quote, similar properties. They'll have a tax account number, the GO reference number, and they'll have a bunch of other data, but nothing to give you a key map location, nothing to give you an actual physical address. So you are completely buying a pig in the poke. There's no other explanation for it. In this particular case, the agent for the district had circled or highlighted a series of properties on this. So what I did is I pulled up each of the account numbers, pulled up the account, and then Google mapped, and lo and behold, instead of having similar buildings on Harwin and West Park, I had the Charmin Charlie's at 99 in Kingsland. I had a retail establishment across from the mega Cypress ISD facility over on Barker Cypress and West Road. I had literally a freestanding restaurant on Alameda across from VA Hospital. I mean, I had everything except something in the neighborhood or a comparable neighborhood, that being Harlan, with the wholesale district between Hillcroft and Gessner. That if you've been out in that area, you know what I'm talking about. The district had $850,000 on this property. I came in and, based on the best of my abilities, came up with $560,000. That was being generous. The arbitrator in this case, after reviewing all the evidence, and of course he was just as shocked as I was when he started looking at everything, did come in on my number on $560,000. Today, that same building is represented by yet another company, and it's at $600,000 or $620,000. So this was going back to 2012 or 2013 value, but this was how mammoth an error existed on the tax rolls, and I'm sure they have to struggle every year to get it, but keep it close to the realistic numbers.